McDougall. He was such a gentleman, let me tell you.
Oh man, what a privilege. I had Jay Leno honor me one night.
Yeah, it's so neat. Hey, everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Well, it's Monday, which means it's time for McDougall Monday, and Dr. McDougall has prepared a brand new presentation with us about the dangers of supplements. Should we supplement, and if so, which ones? This is actually a two-part presentation. He'll do part two on Monday, August 1st. Please welcome to the show, Dr. John McDougall. Always so great to see you, Dr. McDougall.
Well, thank you, AJ, and thanks for making a place for me among your very attentive audience. And hopefully you'll find what I have today worthwhile and interesting. It's from the point of view of being a vegan. And you'll find all kinds of supplements out there that are dedicated toward vegans, but this has been going on for a long time, even though when the pushing of supplements, which became a big business after World War II, was primarily for the general population who were far from vegan. What they've focused the market on these days is people who are vegetarian or vegan, and plain and simple, they're not telling you the truth, and they're selling you a bunch of supplements. And I used to think you were just making expensive urine. That's kind of the way I used to look at it, but you're actually harming yourself by taking these supplements. I'm going to explain to you why. And once you see the evidence and why, you'll understand why it can't do anything but cause significant harm. But, supplements are just a natural evolution of how smart human beings think they are. During World War II, we invented the nuclear bomb, which meant we could destroy the entire planet Earth. We had cures for our nutritional deficiency diseases like scurvy and beriberi and pellagra. And people were dying of these when they're eating refined food, and only when they're eating refined food. Like beriberi only occurred when you were eating refined rice, white rice. And once they started processing the corn, you got to pellagra. And scurvy is due to the lack of fruits and vegetables. And so it was a big deal. It won and lost wars and battles, particularly battles that were out on ships because of scurvy. And this is a disease that occurred as a consequence of the fruits and vegetables spoiling. You left the coast of Britain on your ship with food that would last, like legumes or grains like wheat and barley and so on. And you took your crew out to sea. And along with your initial stock, you also took some fruits and vegetables. But the fruits and vegetables, they spoiled. Within a couple of weeks, they were all gone. And then you were left with the grains and legumes, which are above ground storage organs. In other words, they store their carbohydrate above the ground. And they are deficient in vitamin C. Particularly vitamin C, and that's how you get scurvy. And the solution to this was the British discovered that all they had to do was to add limes to the ship's stores. And if they added a lime, what would happen is they wouldn't get scurvy. And that ended a tremendous reason for them losing battles was the crew was sick. And so the British soldiers became known as the limeys. So yeah, there was a time when these supplements really filled a big gap in human nutrition, but that's not the way it is today. We have such a variety of fruits and vegetables, and most people are not put in a situation where they're eating all refined food, or they're avoiding, say, underground storage organs like potatoes and sweet potatoes, which have plenty of vitamin A and plenty of vitamin C. Anyway, I wish it was just you were wasting your money by getting into supplements now, which treat effectively deficiencies due to refining the food and the absence of fruit and vegetables, but you're hurting yourself. All right, isolated concentrated nutrients. I want you to understand what we're talking about here is taking the ingredients in plant foods and isolating and concentrating them and what I mean by isolating is you take this particular nutrient and you separate it from the protein, the other vitamins, the other minerals, from the carbohydrates, from the fats. In other words, it's just isolated and also concentrated, and then concentrated thousands in fold in concentration and put into pills. At best it's medicinal, like if you have to treat scurvy or you have to treat beriberi or pellagra, or even vitamin D deficiency, which we're going to talk about in our next series about supplements. I'm going to talk to you about vitamin D and how you're being misled with that particular supplement. And we'll also get into the free fatty acids in the next lecture. So vitamins, and I want to distinguish vitamins from minerals for you. Vitamins are tiny organic compounds. They're vital, that are required for you to be healthy. They cannot be synthesized by your body in sufficient quantities. So not only are they vital, they're absolute nutrients. You have to have them. And of those vitamins, there are 13 of them. 11 are from plants. That begins the conspiracy, right? You're supposed to be a plant eater. 11 are from plants. One is not a vitamin, it's a hormone, and that's vitamin D. The difference between a vitamin and a hormone is that hormones, they're in tiny quantities that have powerful effects, but they're synthesized in the body. And vitamin D is a hormone, okay? And it's produced by sunshine on your skin. And we're going to talk about that the next time around. So there you have the 12th vitamin. The 13th vitamin I'm talking to you about today, and that's vitamin B12. So 11 of the 13 vitamins are made by plants, and they're best obtained from the food. So these are the packages that you should get your vitamins from, fruits and vegetables and underground storage organs like potatoes and sweet potatoes. And then, of course, above ground storage organs are fine, like legumes and grains. They're just fine. You just have to add a little bit of fruit or vegetable to get the vitamin A and vitamin C. Your minerals. The plants grow, for them to grow, they require 18 essential nutrients. 3 of them come from the air. They're hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen. The rest of them have to come from the ground. And the way they get into all animals is the animals eat plants. I mean, no animal eats ground, or at least, you don't think of them eating ground, you think of them eating plants. And so directly eating the soil is not a way that you get your minerals. What happens is the minerals, they dissolve in watery solutions in the soil. And they're absorbed in the roots of the plants, and they're incorporated in the roots, stems, leaves, flowers, and fruits of the plant. And then the animal comes along and eats the plant. That's how you get all your minerals, except for the ones that essential nutrients, except for the ones that come from the air. And you, as a vegan or vegetarian, you're told that you don't get sufficient amounts of iron and zinc. That's a big push. Even though iron and zinc come from the ground, even though iron is part of the chlorophyll process for transferring oxygen, even though that iron deficiency does rarely, if ever, occurs due to an inadequate diet. It occurs as a consequence of bleeding, usually often microscopic, sometimes gross bleeding, and malabsorption of iron, which is most commonly due to dairy products. The iron that you get in your food is complex with phosphorus, and as a result, it forms insoluble complexes, and it's not absorbed. The calcium and phosphorus complex the iron, and so you might eat beef, or you might eat I don't, or you might eat green beans, and there's plenty of iron in there, and unfortunately, that iron is not able to be absorbed if you eat dairy products along with it. So that's the reason that you develop iron deficiency. But the reason you're told you're going to be iron deficient is because the assumption is the right diet for you is a diet of meat. And even though all plants are loaded with iron, There are even heavier concentrations of iron and zinc. That's the other promotion. Heavy concentrations of zinc in animal foods, poultry and beef and pork and so on. And where did that cow or pig or chicken get the iron? They got it from eating plants, and they concentrated it into their body tissues. And if you assume that the right diet is a diet that contains these animal foods, then you're left with people who believe that you have iron deficiency because you're not eating as much iron as, say, an omnivore or a partial carnivore. Carnivores are really, really sick. So you're not eating, that's where the assumption comes from. And the same thing with zinc. There's lots of zinc in the muscle of animals. And if I assume that a correct diet is for you to eat animal muscles, and you are a vegan, vegetarian, then I have to assume you're zinc deficient because you're not eating the same concentration as are in animal foods. But you're eating plenty. All right, so you have to, it has to be in the ground. These are elements. They're neither created or destroyed. They have to be in the ground. So you have these 15 different elements like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, magnesium, calcium, iron, boron, magnesium, zinc, and molybdenum, copper. That the way you get them is not by eating ground, it's by eating plants as you're supposed to. So the idea that you're on a mineral deficient diet is complete nonsense. And of course, you see this if you look up for cases, for example, of zinc deficiency, essentially unknown. You know, I found some cases of zinc deficiency in people living in rural Iran. And what happened is that if they ate unleavened bread, because the bread complexed the zinc, they were not able to get enough zinc in their diet. But once you leavened the bread, then the zinc was freed up and there was no iron or no zinc deficiency. And the same thing as I tried to tell you with iron deficiency, it's just, you know, you're bleeding. Any doctor who sees you and you have iron deficiency, the first thing that doctor looks for is sources of blood. Blood loss from the uterus, blood loss from the bowel with a polyp or cancer, or from the stomach from an ulcer. That's where every doctor looks, as a source of bleeding. And then, as I mentioned, you have that issue of calcium and phosphorus, complex in iron that's in other foods. So if you drink dairy products, that's of course the next thing you look at, or the same thing you look at that particular time. All right, I want to make sure we're all clear that when I'm talking to you about supplements, I'm not talking to you about herbal medicines. I'm not talking to you about ginkgo biloba, saw palmetto, glucosamine, MSM. These are drugs. They're medicines that are derived from plants. They're not isolated, concentrated nutrients. And some of them have an effectiveness. And they're natural, so you'd assume they had fewer side effects. But you also would assume that they don't have the potency, the quality that you're looking for, because they're natural and they're not pushed so much. But a lot of these are very effective, and they're termed as supplements. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about isolated, concentrated nutrients, vitamins and minerals. The excuse I hear from people is that soil is depleted. Well, that may be if you eat all your food within, say, 25 miles of your village. And there are grounds that are depleted in certain minerals, like I just showed you the 15 different minerals. But plants require these minerals to grow, except for they don't require selenium. And but again, it's very difficult to find selenium deficiency. And plants don't need iodine. They grow better with iodine, but they don't have to be in the soil. So that's why there is really a thing called iodine deficiency. There was the goiter belt of the Great Lakes, and now still in Africa, there are regions in Africa where there are villages where people eat within, say, 25 miles of their village. All the food is growing there, and they can be deficient in iodine. But what I want to point out to you is that people don't eat just from one region. grown in one local soil. They eat apples from Washington. They eat corn from Idaho. They eat rice grown in Louisiana. They eat foods grown from many different parts. And so if there is a deficiency in one area, it's going to be compensated by food grown in another region. So the idea that soil is depleted is not practically true, except for the iodine deficiency. That is a real happening and something that was corrected. The way they corrected it was they added iodine to the salt. And that essentially wiped out the thyroid disease that was caused by iodine deficiency. Now in Africa, what they do is they give injections that are made of iodine and a fat, a vegetable fat. They give the people injections, and that lasts them a long time, plenty of iodine for a long time. They correct the goiter problems. And by the way, I hope you caught this particular message, and that is that a plant's not going to grow without making these vitamins. It needs them for its own processes. And a plant's not going to grow without having minerals that it requires too. So the plants in themselves they're complete. Now, the reason I don't recommend you take supplements is there's no bang for the buck. I haven't seen in my career, which extends for over half a century, I haven't seen people get well. I've never seen scurvy. I've never seen beriberi. I've never seen pellagra. Not in my modern practice. I've never seen people get well no matter how many thousands of dollars they spend on supplements. Just don't see it. Your friends don't have deficiency diseases. They have diseases of excess animal food, excess vegetable oils. That's why they're sick. That's why they're overweight. It's not from deficiencies, even though, a lot of people would say a lot of supplements. And, when you say that you need to take a supplement, you're taking the attitude that somehow there's some lab technician, sitting down in their laboratory that's smarter than God. And what they did is they improved on Mother Nature. And I just don't believe that. But one of the things we're going to talk about is that when you take these supplements, you create harmful imbalances in your system that do cause diseases. I found this interesting when I was doing the research for this particular lecture. You may know this singer, I didn't. James Blunt, he claims he was diagnosed with sailor's disease, scurvy, after going on a meat-only diet out of principle against his vegan friends. You know how political it is for you to be a vegan. Well, how the carnivores and omnivores are after you. They're really not carnivores, not for any long period of time. Things happened like happened to this man. In 2 months, he developed scurvy, eating an all-meat diet. Why? Because there's no vitamin C in meat, any animal products. Animal products are deficient. As far as minerals are concerned, dairy products may be plentiful in calcium, but they're deficient in iron. And meat may be plentiful in iron, but it's deficient in calcium. So there's where really your deficiencies come from, is eating the animal foods. And of course, the vegetable oils, they're just isolated, concentrated oil. And everything's gone. They're empty calories. So if you're going to get into any kind of trouble, that's what you're going to get into. And that's how you need to respond, is you need to respond by fixing the problem, which is to get the food right, not by taking a bunch of pills. Let's talk about antioxidants first. Antioxidants back in the 1980s were really, really popular because that was the way you were supposed to prevent heart disease and also to prevent cancer. Because what we found is when you look around the world, you look at epidemiology, where disease is common and where it's rare in various parts of the planet Earth. And then you look at people's diets, what you find is people who eat diets that are high in beta carotene. Beta carotene is from plants. It's a precursor of vitamin A, and it's converted into the active form of vitamin A, which is retinol. And vitamin E is found in your legumes, in your wheat, and all the plant foods. And so what they did is they made this relationship. And it was true. I mean, foods that you picked that were deficient in these antioxidants were related to a high risk of certain kinds of cancers, as well as heart disease. And so the assumption is that all we have to do is find out what these ingredients were that prevented cancer and heart disease, and we isolate them out, and we make a ton of money selling them to people. And of course, people are happy because they don't have to eat the vegetables. They instead just take a pill, eat whatever garbage they wanted to. So it became popular to sell pills of beta carotene and vitamin A. Your carotenoids are found in fruits and vegetables. Beta carotene is one of the carotenoids. There are 750 natural carotenoids, which are in fruits and vegetables. And of those 750, the human being needs 50 of them, 50 different carotenoids. One of them is beta carotene, but the other 49 are not beta carotene. So fruits and vegetables are loaded with antioxidants, beta carotenes. Well, one thing I want to straighten out right now that I know some of you are confused about is the idea that you don't want to eat white food, okay? You don't want to eat white food. You're told the color is really important because colorful fruits and vegetables, they indicate a diet high in various carotenoids. The color does. But you're told don't eat anything white. This is an interesting article that kind of looks into this with a different point of view. White vegetables are a forgotten source of nutrients. Why? Because white is all colors. All right. Black is the absence of colors. So white is the most colorful of all foods there are out there. So if you find white food, it could either be really good or really bad. It could be really bad, like in white chicken, white tuna, white bread, and white sugar. That's the bad side. But, people just don't avoid those things. They also avoid potatoes and dried beans and cauliflower and turnips and onions and parsnips and mushrooms and corn. They do because they misinterpret the statement that white is bad and colorful is good. Don't fall into that trap anymore. You know what the bad things are. The animal foods and the vegetable oils, and the good things are, often white food. But remember, they're the most colorful of all the foods because they contain the whole spectrum of light. Black is the absence of light. All right, so anyway, they had that bit of knowledge, and they decided to put it to the test and see whether or not feeding beta carotene to people would reduce the risk of cancer. And they started out by putting smokers and asbestos workers on beta carotene supplements, pills, not carrots and potatoes and other fruits and vegetables. They put them on the supplements, the pills that you're being sold. And this is a randomized controlled trial. So they had a group that was a control group. And they expected to see that the people who are at higher risk for lung cancer, those who are exposed to smoke, cigarette smoke, and those who are exposed to asbestos would be protected by eating these pills, these beta carotene pills. And what they found was those who took the supplements compared to the placebo group had 28% more lung cancer. This is really important research. And they did several of these studies. And, one conclusion is an important harm of increased lung cancer incidence was reported with the use of beta carotene by persons who smoked tobacco and had occupational exposure to asbestos. Where'd that come from? I mean, where'd that statement come from? That's not back in 1996 or a distant past of 20 or 30 years ago. That statement comes out of a U.S. Preventative Task Force statement that was just published in June of this year. All right, now I'm going to tell you why you get the opposite of what you would expect to get. It has to do with causing nutritional imbalances. Remember, there are 50 different carotenoids that you have to have in your diet, and they all come from fruits and vegetables. And these carotenoids, they all could also come from supplements, some of the carotenoids. It couldn't be just beta carotene you're taking, but you're taking an isolated concentrated nutrient. Well, these 50 carotenoids, let's just say you get them from the food, These 50 carotenoids, you chew and swallow them, and they go in your intestinal tract and then into your bloodstream, past the gut barrier. They go into the bloodstream, and then they have to go into the cell. And inside the cell, they go into the cytoplasm. That's the kind of the liquid stuff that's inside the cell. They just float around until they connect themselves with a receptor called a carotenoid receptor. And then they act. Well, carotenoid receptors, they attach to the 50 different carotenoids. There's one single kind of receptor called a carotenoid receptor in the cell, and all of these 50 different carotenoids attach to that kind of receptor. Well, what happens when you flood the system with just one carotenoid with beta carotene? What are the other 49 going to do? They don't get to attach and work and cause balance in the system. Maybe an analogy would be you'd go to work and you pass through the front door and you just walk around. You go to the water cooler and you talk to your friends, and nothing's really done. Nothing's really done until you sit down at your work desk and you attach yourself to the internet. You create these nutritional imbalances by flooding the system with an isolated, concentrated nutrient. Now you understand why these vitamin pills have the potential to cause you to be sick. They imbalance your system. Well, let's take a look at some of the research. Antioxidants for heart disease protection. This, again, was really popular back in the 80s and 90s. This is doctors prescribe for heart patients antioxidant pills. And so one study of 1,800 male smokers who had a history of heart disease, they were taking vitamin E or beta carotene together singly, and it resulted in an increased risk of fatal heart attacks. If you want to read the study, I just kind of grabbed a portion out of it, is the proportion of, this is the conclusion right from the study, the proportion of major coronary events in men with a previous myocardial infarction who smoked was not decreased with either vitamin E or beta carotene supplements. In fact, the risk of fatal coronary heart disease was increased in groups that received either of these supplements, vitamin E or beta carotene. Well, you know why. Now you know why. It's because nutritional imbalances were caused in your cells by flooding the system with concentrated, isolated nutrients. Just giving vitamin E to elderly, and half the elderly people take a mineral and a vitamin supplement. So this is common. These supplements, well, let's look at this particular study showed, and neither daily multi-mineral supplementation at a physiologic dose or 200 milligrams of vitamin E showed a favorable effect on the incidence and severity of acute respiratory infections in well-nourished, non-institutionalized, in other words, they weren't in assisted living homes or nursing homes. In elderly, instead, we observed adverse effects of vitamin E, increase of illness. Cochrane, I love to have Cochrane on my side. Cochrane is a organization worldwide that does reviews. It's made of, it consists of 40,000 scientists and doctors and experts in particular fields, and they evaluate treatments, information on medicine and health and so on, all the way from, say, head lice to the most powerful cancer chemotherapy agents. And then what they do is they write a summary. They have the time, they have the interest in this particular field. And so they will review it, and they'll do something called a Cochrane review. That's what they do at the Cochrane collaboration. So a couple of their reports, 14 randomized trials involving 170,000 people were using beta carotene, vitamins A, C, E, and selenium alone or in combination showed no effect at decreasing cancer. The results of 7 studies showed a small but significant increase in mortality for using these supplements. Furthermore, a combination of beta carotene and vitamin A, in other words, the active form, associated with increased risk of death. Another report from Cochrane is beta carotene and vitamin E in combination shows a 10% increased risk in death. And I particularly can relate to this one because every morning for breakfast, I'd get a bowl of cereal with milk, of course, from my mother, my well-meaning mother. And she would give me a one-a-day supplement with a glass of orange juice. And I knew there was something wrong because I got terrible indigestion after this concoction of the vitamin pill, which, makes you sick. I should have known better. I continued to take them. Well, they did a review of one-a-day multivitamins, no particular brand, and what they found is 9,000 premature deaths occurred for every million people treated with these antioxidant supplements. You can count on this. Here's the report that just came out in June of this year, U.S. Preventative Task Force. They're the most reliable source of health information for people in the United States. And what they did is they looked at the effect of mineral and vitamin and multivitamin supplements to prevent cardiovascular disease, in other words, strokes and heart attacks, and cancer. And their recommendation is against the use of beta carotene and vitamin E supplements for the prevention of cardiovascular disease and cancer. And the conclusion, USPSTF recommends with moderate certainty that the harms of beta carotene supplementation outweigh the benefits for the prevention of cardiovascular disease or cancer. No net benefit of supplementation with vitamin E for the prevention of cardiovascular disease or cancer. They just came out with this extensive review. You're buying this stuff. Okay, let's talk a little bit about folic acid. That's another of the supplements that people take a lot of. And folate received its name following its isolation from spinach. Okay, spinach, I guess in Latin, folium means leaf. It was discovered in 1941. Now, there's a difference between folate, which is the plant form of this vitamin, the natural form, and folic acid, which are the pills that you take. Well known is the effect of folic acid in preventing and folic acid in preventing neural tube defects. This is a catastrophe. I saw this when I was a young doctor working on the obstetrics ward, in the pediatric ward. I mean, little children would be born with their spinal cord open and the nerves exposed, and they were paraplegic. Or another extent of this neural tube defect, the neural tube, the brain that goes down the spinal column, was I was in the delivery room on the birth of two children that had anencephaly. That means they were born without a brain. And this is due to the absence of, it's the absence of folate. The absence of plants, that's what it's really due to. The solution was to tell all women, and you know this, if you're in the reproductive years, is to tell all women to take folic acid supplements when they're at an age of reproduction. You have to do it before you're pregnant, because the defects occur before you even know you're pregnant. Okay, so a standard recommendation is to avoid a spina bifida, anencephaly, and heart defects and cleft palate is for you to be on a folic acid supplement. Why would that be necessary? It's because people eat a folate deficient diet. They don't eat plants. Folks have been around on this planet for a long time, 4 million years. You're looking at hominids, 750,000 to 1 million years if you're looking at Homo sapiens. And, I can only guess that we did, and I'm probably right, that we didn't have these problems. Why? Because a woman's diet was loaded with folate. And now we have to tell all women to consciously take pills. And they have to start taking them as soon as they're reproductive age to prevent these serious neural tube defects. That doesn't make sense. What makes sense is to put the population, all the population, not just the women, on a folate sufficient diet. In other words, plant foods. All plant foods are loaded with folate, not just leafy vegetables. All right. So it, you know, it works, and the recommendations out there. And if that's the best you can do, you know, for your children or you can't talk your granddaughter into doing it. And that's the best you can do, I suppose, take the pills, but you might as well fix the problem. And so we did. We've done this as a recommendation for the entire food supply of the United States. We have by law folic acid fortification of the flour products and the cereals. You know, assuming that not enough women will be taking the pills on their own to prevent neural tube defects, is to fortify the whole food supply with folic acid. Well, this creates some problems because the same levels that occur from the folic acid supplements that prevent the neural tube defects cause an increased risk of other problems, like, for example, more breast cancer. They found that fortifying the food for a woman increased the risk of death, breast cancer, of dying from breast cancer, doubled it. And they also found that it increased the risk of heart disease. The same dose of folic acid that's required to prevent neural tube defects causes in adults more cancer and more heart disease. Here's the Norvit study. It's the Norwegian vitamin trial, where they gave the whole population, or at least a big segment of the population, a supplement of 0.8 milligram of folic acid and some B12 and a little B6. And they followed nearly 4,000 people for 3.5 years, and it lowered their homocysteine levels, but it increased the risk of heart attack, stroke, and death by 20%. Now, I hope you're getting the message is that, yes, you should be getting these plant-derived substances in their natural environment so that you don't create nutritional imbalances, but you ought not to be taking pills. Increase the risk of cancer. A common way of treating heart patients about 20 years ago, I hope it's stopped now, is that standard was to, of course, the drug companies are really happy about this, well, was to give people who are at risk for heart disease, which is like the entire population of the United States and Europe, but particularly men in either countries, and they would give him Foltex, which was a pill. This was standard therapy of folic acid and vitamin B6 and B12. This is basically what they got. It lowered homocysteine levels, which is a risk factor for heart disease, but it increased the risk of dying of heart disease. In this particular study, after 6 months of supplementation, in 636 heart patients with stents, folic acid treated patients were found to have more narrowing of the arteries, more artery closure, in other words, heart attacks, and more major cardiac events compared to those on the placebo. Stop doing that. They have. Okay, well, it's not just with vitamins that you create these mineral imbalances in the cell at the cellular level. Excuse me, these nutritional imbalances at the cellular level. It also occurs with minerals. When you're taking minerals, if you flood the system with one particular mineral over what is naturally in the plants, Mother Nature did it right. Then what happens is you create nutritional imbalances. For example, the absorption of copper, which is an essential nutrient, is inhibited by zinc. So you take zinc pills, what happens? You inhibit copper utilization. The intestinal competition of zinc with copper, iron, lead, calcium, cadmium may accelerate nutritional deficiency and toxicity of these chemicals. Cadmium is very toxic, so is lead. And vitamins influence how the body acts with plants. You may be told that it's better to get your source of iron from meats, from animal products, because this is in the ferric form, and the plants have the ferrous form of iron. But what you rarely hear is if you take ascorbic acid, which is from plants, from fruits and vegetables, then what happens is you increase the absorption of iron to levels where essentially iron deficiency and anemia does not exist with any natural diet. It exists because people bleed and they're drinking baby calf's milk. All right. So I hope you understand so far what is being caused by when you buy these supplements. You're creating nutritional imbalances because your vitamins and your minerals, they don't really have any activity until they connect to receptors inside the cell. And by competition, by flooding the system with various vitamins and minerals, you create imbalances and you destroy your cells. You increase your risk of cancer and dying of heart disease and heart disease. Okay, but I want to mention that supplements can be used as medicines. And even though vitamin C will not prevent a cold, they say it reduces the symptoms of colds. And vitamin D, which we're going to talk about in the next lecture series, vitamin D may delay the loss of bone in elderly, but sunshine's the right source. And it's only the elderly that are confined, and they're white women, that you see any benefits when it comes to vitamin D supplementation. I'm going to talk to you about that evidence. And folic acid will prevent neurotube defects, as we talked about, but you get from the folate from plants. And vitamin B12 might be a good idea for strict vegetarians. We're going to talk about this next. Iodine supplementation prevents thyroid disease. I talked to you about that. And iron deficiency is used for treating, or iron supplements are used for treating iron deficiency. So we still use these in the medical business under situations where people have real problems. But they're not for they're not for your everyday health. Get over this. Let's talk about B12. B12, I knew 46 years ago that B12 would be the last bastion of argument against being a vegan. Because nobody, no scientist, no dietitian, no whatever, I don't care who you are as far as an expert, can argue that the McDougall diet is deficient in protein or amino acids or iron or calcium. You just can't do that. So what's the last bastion for you who just won't give up your meat and your dairy? You have to say, oh no, but you're going to become B12 deficient. And I know you've been exposed to this kind of criticism. B12 is, it has cobalt in it. And so it's a cobalamin, that's what it's called. And the way I get over this, and as you'll hear in a couple of times, is that I get over this criticism that is really the only criticism of the McDougall diet by saying, I understand. And so we recommend B12. And I'll show you the recommendations in just a minute. If you don't have enough B12, you get megaloblastic anemia. And that means that you have an anemia. You say you have a hemoglobin of 5 or 6 that is well tolerated and easily reversible. People are walking around with megaloblastic anemia because the cells are so big. That's from vitamin B12 deficiency. And you might get numbing and tingling in your hands and feet, which is reversible up until late stages. Late stages of B12 deficiency, it can become, at least that's what they say. I still have some questions. It can become an irreversible condition as far as neurologic disease. Yeah. So you certainly want to prevent it and you want to treat it. Okay, these are the recommendations that I've given. First book that I wrote, all the way, every DVD and so on. Why should I bother with any criticism about the diet I recommend? Because it's so solid, the evidence that this is the nutrition for the human being. So I've kind of dispensed it with this sort of warning. If you follow the McDougall diet for more than 3 years, and it takes 20 to 30 years to run out of B12 if you've got a well-functioning intestinal tract, or if you're pregnant or nursing, then you take 5 micrograms of B12 daily. And you say, well, doc, it's pretty hard to get that low of a dose. Yeah, it is. We'll talk about it in a minute. And it takes 20 to 30 years to run out of your B12. If you have a normal functioning intestinal tract, you're recirculating your vitamin B12, which a normal healthy person does. Even if you cut out your stomach so you don't have this recirculation of B12, you have stores of 2 to 3 years. You've got plenty of time to figure out how to get your B12. Pernicious anemia. Pernicious means deadly. And this was discovered, pernicious anemia, in 1824, first time it's described. And I want to repeat that. Pernicious means you're going to die. So what it is due to, it's due to damage of the stomach lining. either by an autoimmune disease. Okay, the body attacks itself. We've talked about, what causes the body to attack itself. It's a longer discussion, and I want you to look at the lecture I gave on autoimmune disease to get the whole story. But essentially, it's eating animals, eating stomachs, for example, or surgery. We used to take out the stomach because of peptic ulcer disease. And then what happened is you developed B12 deficiency. You had to give B12. Well, the reason is the stomach makes something called intrinsic factor. Now, this is complicated, but it's a little important. I think you'll find the story interesting. The stomach makes something that we call intrinsic factor. And what the intrinsic factor does is it combines with extrinsic factor, which is the cobalamin, the cobalt-containing vitamin B12. And it makes it very efficient as far as its absorption. Just tiny doses of B12 can now be absorbed if you have intrinsic factor. In other words, they have your stomach producing this particular substance. It even, if you don't, once you cut off the stomach, it takes 3 to 6 years to become anemic. Okay, William Castle. William Castle was one of the founding fathers of experimental hematology. In 1925, he reported the cure of pernicious anemia. What he did is he took people who were dying and from pernicious anemia. And what he did is he took and divided them into 2 groups that were dying of pernicious anemia. And he fed one group cooked ground beef to healthy subjects. Okay, so he took some healthy people, some healthy men and women, and he fed them cooked ground beef. The people with pernicious anemia, and along with that, the experimental group, he fed gastric juices after they ate the cooked ground beef. Okay, and then he took the control group and he fed them. They have pernicious anemia. Cooked ground beef without giving them the stomach juices, the gastric juices. And those who got only the cooked beef, who had pernicious anemia, they suffered from profound anemia. This is pernicious. It means that you're going to die. But those who ate the combination of beef, which of course is loaded with B12, and the gastric juices, which contain intrinsic factor, in other words, that substance that's made by the stomach that makes B12 efficiently absorbed, they got cured right away. Like 100% of them got cured. And so, since then, doctors, medical students, et cetera, have been talking about when it comes to B12, and we all know this particular description, we've been talking about intrinsic factor, which is made by the stomach, and extrinsic factor, which is the actual B12 itself. This has some more relevance as we go on, but William Castle, he made these discovery reports back in 1925, but 100 years ago. So where does B12 come from? Well, B12 is synthesized by bacteria. There are a few algae that synthesize B12, but there's a question about whether the B12 is just analogs and doesn't work well. So what you're doing is you're essentially eating germs. And ruminants are particularly efficient at giving you a whole bunch of germs and a whole bunch of B12 when you eat them, because ruminants, they have 4 stomachs. And each of these stomachs is loaded with germs. And so they make lots of B12 and they store the B12 in their muscles and other tissues. And you eat the muscles and other tissues and you get these bacteria synthesized substances, the B12. No cow or sheep or other animal makes B12. Only bacteria do. And the reason that animals have this B12 is because they ate bacteria. But even human beings, we make B12 in our intestine. We make most of the B12 in the last part of the small intestine, which contains, you hear about all the time, the microbiome. 4 trillion bacteria per cc of feces. But in the normal day, you're not supposed to be eating feces. It depends on whether you have a 1-year-old around or not, and how cleanly you are, et cetera. But the concern is whether or not you can get B12, say you stopped eating all meat, stopped taking all supplements, would you be in contact with enough bacteria to get all the B12 you needed? The mouth is the dirtiest part of the body. You know, I was taught this as a first-year medical student. They took a swab of each of our mouths and they put it on a petri dish, and they came back a couple of days later, and we all looked at the petri dish with the colonies of bacteria that were growing from our mouth. And the instructor pointed out, the mouth is the dirtiest part of the body. Okay, the problem is you swallow the bacteria that produce B12, and they go to the stomach, and they're drowned in stomach acid, and they're inactivated. But still, the small intestine has bacteria that make B12. But let's just say it's not adequate. And all right, now you ask yourself, you say, well, why, Dr. McDougall, if your diet is so perfect, it has the perfect amount of protein, the right kind of protein, amino acids, the perfect amount of calcium, iron, et cetera. Why, if it's so perfect, would it have any deficiency, like a deficiency in vitamin B12? Well, the answer, I think, is quite simple. We have this germ phobia. And it was started with Louis Pasteur, who brought to us the germ theory. He discovered germs. He discovered how food was spoiled by invisible bacteria. Back in his day, they didn't have the microscope to show the bacteria that were spoiling the food. They thought somehow it came from something in the atmosphere, some spontaneous degeneration. And he discovered germs. But even back, he knew. This is a quote from him. It's not the germs we need to worry about. It's our inner terrain. In other words, it's the health of the body. It's not the germs we got to fear. But that's not what happened. What happened is people turned out, fearing germs. And so we take antibacterial mouthwashes, and we scrub our hands. We scrub our kitchen. We're fastidious about being hygienic. And, there's a downside to that. So in answer to the question, why, Dr. McDougall, is your diet so perfect, isn't deficient in anything? It's because for the first million years, people ate in a non-hygienic environment loads of B12. Okay, you go out and you grab the root vegetables from the ground, you shake the dirt off, and what you have is a whole bunch of bacteria growing on the roots of your vegetables that make B12. And then what you do is you go into your kitchen area, and your pet chicken is sitting on your counter, and what you do is remove the pet chicken and as much of the stuff that the pet chicken leaves on the counter. You cut up your food, and then you eat it. Yeah, and so maybe we just don't get enough of germs, which has always been with us and intended. That's maybe why the type of diet I recommend, how many of you follow, which is a vegan diet, maybe why you have some cases of B12 deficiency. But let me tell you, they're really, really rare. I can find studies of metabolic changes which reflect lower B12 in the body. But as far as real diseases, I almost come up empty-handed when I look for cases of people who suffer from B12 deficiency. Megaloblastic anemia, not related to cutting the stomach out, not related to getting rid of the intrinsic factor like we just talked about, but due to the fact that they eat a vegetable-based diet. They're almost non-existent. And when they do happen, it makes national headlines. Like for example, a letter to the editor, not a research paper, a letter to the editor in the New England Journal of Medicine, the year 2000. It was titled Blindness in Strict Vegetarian. That made front page of newspapers around the world. Don't become a vegan because you're going to go blind. Now, I read this letter to the editor, and I could see what was going on. And the follow-up letters to the editors showed that my colleagues could see what was going on. What was going on is this man had a horrible diet. He was a 33-year-old man who was found to have blindness. Not a good thing. He'd been a strict vegetarian for 20 years, but tests showed he suffered from deficiencies of vitamin A, which is from plants, vitamin C, which is from plants, vitamin D, which is from sunshine, vitamin E, which is from plants, B1, which is from plants. You know, it's on the outside coating of the rice. That's how you get beriberi. And folic acid, which is from plants. He just had a horrible, horrible diet. He was suffering from severe malnutrition. And B12 shots, he corrected his anemia, but he didn't get his vision back. But this hit national headlines. Why? Because people, they like to hear good news about their bad habits. And I could just see them saying to their vegan friends, look, you want me to go blind eating a vegan diet? You know, you want me to go blind? Well, what's the risk of you going? Even if it's true, it's not. Even if it's true, your risk of having a disease is far less than 1 in a million. Your risk of having a heart attack is 1 in 2. I mean, if you decide you're going to sufficiently add B12 and you're going to eat animal foods, you have a 50% chance of dying prematurely of a heart attack or stroke. You know, you have a 1 in 7 chance of getting and dying of breast cancer, a 1 in 6 chance of prostate cancer. You know, 80% chance of suffering from overweight or obesity, and certainly constipation. I mean, compare the risks. Where are you going to take your chances? Well, that's sensationalism. People like to hear good news about their bad habits, and they're going to come up after you if they find out that you're better than them. Yeah, that's what they hear is you're better than them because you don't eat animals. You do it for the animals, you do it for animal rights, and you do it for your health. And somehow that's what they hear is you're a better person than I am. That's not what you're saying. Even though you may be a smarter person than they are. Okay, you're worried about your B12 levels. Well, get your blood checked and an accurate test. B12 values of over 200 picograms per milliliter is normal. You get this cheap test, a couple of bucks. The last time I checked, we did them on our patients occasionally. It was $13. Levels below 80 picograms represent unequivocal B12 deficiency, which is likely due to damage of your stomach. Not due to what you eat, but stomach damage, autoimmune diseases, stomach surgery, where you don't have intrinsic factor anymore. So how do I avoid the criticism? I told you what I do is I tell people follow the McDougall diet for more than 3 years. It takes 20 to 30 years to run out of B12 because it's so efficiently circulated in the intestinal tract. Or if you're pregnant or nursing, then take a minimum of 5 micrograms of supplemental B12 each day. Okay, the first question, let me tell you how much it takes to correct pernicious anemia. It takes 0.3 to 0.65 of microgram per day. So when I recommend 5 micrograms a day, I'm recommending 10 times more than you need to correct deadly anemia, severe megaloblastic anemia, pernicious anemia. I'm recommending you eat 10 times more than you need. But the first question you come back to me and you say, well, but doc, I went to the health food store, I went to the supermarket, and all I could find was B12 in doses of 500 to 5,000 micrograms per pill. Which is compared to my 5 micrograms, it's 1,000 times greater. 5,000 micrograms is. Why do they do that? Well, the first answer I'm going to give you is they do. And that's going to take care of anybody who has missing intrinsic factor, because there's 2 types of absorption occur of B12. There's active, which involves the intrinsic factor that's made in the stomach. And there's a passive absorption of B12, which is very inefficient. It's 1,000 times less efficient. But if you take B12 pills in the concentration of 1,000 to 2,000 micrograms, you will correct any form of B12 deficiency, even in people who have the stomach lack of intrinsic factor. That's why I think they sell them in such high doses. The next question I get from you is, okay, well, if it's that little I need to take and I can't find the dose, can I take it once a week? Oh, sure you can. Well, can I take it once a month? Well, yeah, you can take it once a month. I recommend once a day because it's easier for people to remember once a day. But yeah, you could take these supplements and the B12 is more efficiently absorbed sublingually. So you can take a sublingual supplement, but you're not going to miss the supplements. They have the cobalamin, which means they have a cobalt molecule. That's the important part of the cobalamin molecule, the B12. But they also come in various forms, 4 different forms. Then you say, well, go to the natural food store and I find a methylcobalamin, an adenosylcobalamin, a hydroxycobalamin, and a cyanocobalamin, which means cyanide and the poison. And there was concern, and the article's down there if you want to read it, about the effectiveness of the cyanide form. It wasn't really effective at reversing neurologic conditions, even though that's what if you have a B12 problem, the doctor may try and give you shots, which, by the way, I just told you are unnecessary. You can just take the pills in a dose of 1,000 to 2,000 micrograms. But, get you in getting a shot every month because you're tired or whatever. You really have B12 deficiency. That's part of the medical business. But they're giving you the cyano form. The other thing is the first 2 forms, the adenosine and the hydroxy forms, they're the ones that are inside the cell and are better absorbed. So those are the ones that I would take. Yeah. And, you want to cover all bases, buy a couple of different forms and, take one pill 1 week and another pill the next week. You just got, science needs to be settled on this. I used to believe that B12 supplementation caused no harm at all. I knew it wasn't true, but I used to believe it. And then there were some recent articles out that came out just a few months ago about how higher B12 levels were associated with more lung cancer. And the conclusion was that taking B12 supplements is sometimes harmful. But that's not the conclusion I came to from reading the articles. What I came to is what's probably true is those who have a B12 sufficient diet, in other words, are heavy meat eaters or animal food eaters, they have more lung cancer, because I know that. That's what the research says. The B12 issue is just incidental. So to this date, I don't think B12 supplementation is harmful or creates any serious nutritional imbalances. I think where you're getting the B12 from is very harmful from the animal foods. But I reserve the right to change my opinion. Now, I reserve the right to change my opinion when it comes to lots of science, lots of treatments, lots of medications. Why? Because the research is incomplete and it's confusing. Even though I probably read a good share of it, it's confusing. And so, you have to allow that for me. You have to allow me the opportunity to change my opinion. But I want to tell you, if you're waiting for me to change my opinion on what the ideal diet is of the human being, in other words, that you're a starch eater, a starchitarian, a starchivore, it's not going to happen. I've been thinking about this for a long time. It's just plain and simple not going to happen. So you might as well just give in. All right, so you're a vegan. You don't want to eat pills. And you don't want to eat meat. Is there any other option for you? Well, seaweed has bacteria on it. And it's declared a most excellent source of vitamin B12, edible seaweeds for strict vegetarians. And there's the research for you if you want to read it. All right, I think we should quit this lecture. You need to get vitamins, which are vital in small organic compounds. And 11 of 13 vitamins are made by plants, and so you get them by plants. And the one we're going to talk about next time we get together is made by sunshine. It's a hormone. And you already know enough about B12, don't you? And believe me, I don't want to have any criticism about what I recommend. People love to hear good news, and believe it or not, there are probably a few people out there that like to hear McDougall went down in flames. So any of you develop tingling in your toes from B12 deficiency, and they somehow interpret it as being due to our diet, I'm going to make front page headlines in all your newspapers. Just like this vegan went blind. Good news about bad habits. So Same thing with the minerals. They come from the ground. They get to you through plants. You can't miss. Taking isolated concentrated nutrients causes you to be sick. It's not just a waste of money. All right. So I just want to add here is a couple of things. If you like what we have to say and you're in trouble, which most people are, you need some help getting your life straightened around because you're tired of being overweight and being on a bunch of drugs that are probably doing you more harm than good. We run a program. We run a 12-day internet-based program where you can take it from any place in the world. We've got 50 people right now who are taking that program with problems from from heart disease to obesity to kidney failure to cancer, and they get diet therapy. In other words, they get their problems fixed with food, which is the most powerful medicine there is. If you listen to my lecture on Sunday on diet therapy, you know what I'm telling you. It's not an exaggeration. You want to fix the problem, you fix it by changing your diet. You fix the problem, which is the bad food. You want to get off your medication. That's one of the major goals of our program is to get you off the drugs. Sick people take drugs. And we run one of these programs every month. And I would, if you've had enough, you're really worried because you've gone on for so long and not in good health, then let us help you. Let us help you make the changes. If you're not quite ready yet, hopefully Chef AJ will keep having me on the show, and I'll keep taking bits of your thinking and hopefully turning them around. Plus, Mary and I and Heather are going to start a Sunday evening fireside chat. We've got hundreds of people signed up already, and hopefully we'll get hundreds more, and I invite you to do it. It's free. The only advertisement that you're going to get is you're going to get an advertisement for our program because it's our business. And because, we really believe in it. We really want you to have this opportunity. And so we're going to advertise the program just like I'm doing here right now. But nothing else. And it's a place where you can bring friends and family. You get better, you lose 120 pounds, you get off your blood pressure pills, your diabetic pills. And they look at you and they go, my goodness, what did you do? And you tell them what you did. And they say, that's crazy. It must be some kind of health food nut recommending it. Well, tell them, look, you can come and meet John and Mary McDougall every Sunday evening, 5 o'clock Pacific time. And you sit down and watch them, see who they are, decide whether or not they're trying to do you good or harm. And I think this is a good way to get people going away and saying, this is not so unreasonable. This makes a lot of sense. And these people really are interested in my health. Not trying to sell me something. They're really interested in my health. We do this absolutely free of charge, anonymously. Every Sunday evening, 5 o'clock Pacific time. And Chef AJ is going to put the link up there for you. And you go to the link and sign up. And okay, well, let's see. I'll probably to top. What time is it, Mary? 11:10. Not bad for a lecture that I thought would take 10 minutes. All right. Anyway, I enjoyed giving you the lecture, and we're going to put this up on YouTube, and we're going to finish off and talk about vitamin D, which is it's just a sad story. You're being terribly harmed by taking vitamin D supplements, and I'll show you the research. I'm not just trying to tell you and ask you to believe me. I show you where the evidence is. When I tell you antioxidants are worthless and harmful, I've got the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force publishing review summaries and national recommendations that are telling you the same thing. It's been a little late. They had this evidence for 30 years, but they're telling you, look, this stuff is dangerous. You're wasting your money. You're being hurt. And I'm going to tell you a similar story about vitamin D. Hopefully I get you off those supplements. And the other snake oil medicine that's being sold by so many health food experts, such as DHA and EPA supplements. And forewarned, if you want to come and talk about it and you have another point of view, I'm going to be talking about the supplements you sell in your office to the gullible customers you have. And anyway, we'll have a lot of fun. And again, as long as AJ will put up with me, I'll keep regularly coming back here. I know she has a lot of great guests that have almost always an opinion that's consistent with you getting well. and almost never with the idea of selling you something. So anyway, let's see if I can get Mary to come on over here and spend a few minutes with us and answer a couple of questions. I hope this supplement lecture gave you some understanding. Again, I don't want you to believe me. I want you to see it. I want you to understand why, so you can make decisions based upon, your own point of view, your own understanding. You don't have to go up and say, well, I quit all these supplements because Dr. McDougall said so. Yeah, I quit all these supplements because they cause nutritional imbalances. And, the research is absolutely solid, as reviewed by the Cochrane Collaboration, as reviewed by the U.S. Services Preventative Task Force, and as is present in essentially all the scientific literature. But hey, it's profitable. So anyway, Mary, you want to come over? All right. And I do have probably questions to answer myself, but they'd probably like to hear from you too. So Mary's been my best friend and my partner for over 50 years. And she is the inventor of low-fat vegan cooking. And she really is the inventor of it. And she does something that all of my mentors have failed to be able to do. And my mentors, I'm not original in what I try and teach. I have men whose shoulders I stand on, who did all the basic research, like Dennis Burke and Nathan Pritikin and Roy Swank and Walter Kepner, I talked to you about a couple of days ago. They did wonderful, but what they didn't have is they didn't have Mary that put it into practical terms so that you would really enjoy the food and take you in the kitchen. And that's what we're going to do on Sunday evenings. Is every once in a while we'll turn our office around and you're not going to cook, are you, Mary?
I'm not going to cook.
No, but we'll tell you about how to make the food, and we'll tell you about.
I can show them how to put some things together.
And we'll tell you about the latest scientific research, and you can bring in contrary opinions out there if you want. And I may know enough about what you're asking about to answer the question right away. Or if I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know, and I've got to look it up. And
well, it's called Ask Me Anything.
Is that the name of it?
Yeah, so you're gonna get a few questions, I'm sure.
Okay, well, I'll try and sort through the garbage for you, particularly the garbage that's coming from the experts, medical doctors. I'm a medical doctor. I've seen the practice of medicine for over 50 years. I've been in diet therapy for 46 years. I've taken care of 12,000 patients. So I'd like to be able to share my knowledge with you. And so we'll do that every once in a while on Chef AJ's show, and we're going to do it every Sunday night. Okie dokie, it's all yours, Chef AJ.
All right, well, thank you very much. What a wonderful lecture. The supplement industry is $1 billion industry, isn't it, Dr. McDougall?
Well, I think you ought to add a few numbers onto that. It's a multi-billion-dollar business.
Just like the weight loss industry.
There's a sucker born every day.
Yeah. Everybody's commenting on your cute blouse, Mary, and how you guys always are color coordinated.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. People are wondering if the Fireside Chat is live only, or are they recorded for future viewing?
Yeah, they're recorded. They'll be on YouTube, and they're live. So you'll have a chance to ask questions one way or another. We're gonna maybe.
Then they'll be up on YouTube afterward. Right?
Yeah, they'll be up on YouTube afterwards.
Well, this is great. People are very excited about this.
Yeah, like I say, we announced it just a couple of days ago. We have, a few hundred people or more already signed up. I hope you took advantage of it because it was only a one-day sale. I couldn't believe it. We talked about it on Saturday, so I gave some of your audience a chance to get involved in. The Starch Solution book was like $15.99 usually on
Kindle. Kindle copy, yeah.
And they sold it for $1.99. We bought 500 copies. I hope you bought a copy for your friends and family and doctors and dietitians. But even at $15.99, it's a real deal. But they were $1.99. Hopefully, within a year,
they'll do it again next year for Amazon Prime.
We'll try and let you know. It's a very basic book, the Starch Solution.
Great recipes in it too.
It has great recipes. It's called starch.
So Dr. McDougall, do you want to take questions that came in just on supplements or on any topic?
Well, let's start with the supplements.
Good. Okay. But then I'll do that. I'll look through them. And guys, you got to get them in advance when Dr. McDougall's on. This is about supplements from Harriet. Thank you for taking the time to educate the public regarding supplements. I've been vegan for 4 years and never had an issue with constipation. However, last year I was under the care of a naturopath and she ordered multiple supplements. After a year under her care, I had a routine colonoscopy, which I know you're not a fan of, and was diagnosed with melanosis coli. I immediately stopped all supplements. Question to Dr. McDougall, could the supplements be the cause of this new diagnosis? If yes, how can you reverse melanosis coli?
Well, most colitises are due to what you put in your intestinal tract. And I'm not familiar with melanosis coli. You know, we have all kinds of different colitises and somebody attaches a different name to them. But if you're going to pick one thing that I would suspect, it'd be the oil in the supplements. Because oil causes the production of bile acids in the liver. And bile acids end up in the intestinal tract, and bile acids are very irritating. And so they cause a severe colitis. And that's the number one thing that I would think about.
So a lot of supplements are packed in oil capsules, right?
Yeah. Oil-based. And of course, one of the big food items for the average American is oil, you know, corn oil, safflower oil, et cetera. I we watch a bit of cable news, and you see people coming out of the grocery store with big bags of bottles of oil. They wonder why they're obese. The fat you eat's the fat you wear. They wonder why they're sick and diabetic and have all kinds of intestinal problems. It's not a mystery, folks. It's real easy to understand, and it's real easy to fix. But I know you need some help. Let us help you get off the drugs. Let's help you with some of the things that aren't working out. You're a great team.
Great, thank you. This is a question about, are there any, this is from Sheba, are there supplements that can be taken for fatigue following COVID-19 that can be taken for a short period of time without significant risk?
Probably for a short period of time, they won't cause a significant risk, but I don't think they work. I've never heard of one that works. You know, there are articles that I read and there are news stories that I hear about long COVID, and it's a mystery. You know, people think it's a mystery, but I'll tell you one fact, and that is your risk of getting really sick with these viruses, you know, would be it COVID-19 or the variant 5A or 5B or whatever the next variant will be, your chances of being seriously sick, and I believe developing long COVID, depend upon your background health. We've known since 2019, when the Chinese first described COVID-19, we've known that those people who eat the Western diet who develop comorbid factors they're the ones that are hospitalized. They're the ones that end up on a ventilator for 2 weeks until they drowned in their own fluids and die. You know, the Chinese told us that before we had our first case of COVID-19 in the United States.
So do you think everybody knows what comorbid factors are? I mean, they throw that word around, but what does it mean?
Well, it means you're too fat.
It means other things besides that.
Yeah, comorbid, in other words,
means
sick and dead.
All right.
Okay, morbid. Comorbid factors are things like, in addition to having the sickly virus, you got too much fat, you got too much diabetes, you got too much kidney failure, you got too much heart failure. Yeah, comorbid factors are the things that we cure, and we cure them. We just don't manage them, we cure them by dealing with the cause of these comorbid factors, which is the rich Western diet. So the obese become trim, and I'm sure Chef AJ's told you that many times. And the diabetics, 100% of them who have type 2 diabetes are cured. And those with kidney disease are dramatically improved. Those with heart failure, they make the heart work much better when you get rid of the comorbid factors. And so, yeah, you got a fighting chance if you understand the importance of good health. And when I heard this story last night on cable news about how they couldn't figure out why some people develop long COVID. Well, I don't think it's any big mystery, at least why a large amount of the population that develops long COVID, lasts for months and months and months, they went into this viral infection in bad health. I mean, the next time they should show somebody dying in the intensive care unit of COVID, whatever, look at them. Look at them laying in the bed. What are you seeing? An obese person. Bill Maher said in one of his shows, he says, nobody dies of COVID unless they're too fat. Anthony Fauci, in June of 2020, he told the Congress that, you just don't get very sick if you don't have comorbid factors. The CDC told us the next month in July that if you have comorbid factors, you have 12 times the risk of hospitalization and 6 times the risk of dying. Everybody knows this. Is anybody responding? Not many.
Well, that's because most people have one or more comorbid factors.
Essentially 80% of the Americans do. Yeah. But they don't have to.
I know.
Just so stupid, simple. If you eat the diet that 99.99% of the people who ever walk this earth have eaten, which is a starch-based diet. Like we have a lady who's from Mexico in the program now. And she could remember when she was a kid that her family lived on corn and beans and squash, and there were no overweight people in her village. There are examples you have. You can see this. You can see what I'm telling you is true. There used to be no overweight people in China. There used to be no diabetics in China. Now 12% of the population of Chinese are diabetic and half are pre-diabetic. You go country by country by country. Just in the United States, this has been going on for a long time. Lots of people have been eating like kings and queens. It's just recently that the Africans, the people in the Far East, people in Central America have been able to afford to eat like Americans. Show me an example. Show me one population that's made this transition from a starch-based diet to a well-balanced diet. Lots of meat so you don't get protein deficient, lots of dairy so you can eat your ice cream. It's got to be. You show me one exception of a population that's made this transition where the bulk of the people, well, that's a good term, bulk of the people has not become sick with comorbid factors. You can see this. It's right in front of you. You just change back to lots of potatoes and sweet potatoes and corn and rice, and you say you don't like those. Well, it's because you were taught the wrong thing, but you can learn to like them. I bet you don't like meat either. Even right now, even though you think you're a great meat eater, get yourself a great big steak or a piece of chicken wing or chicken thigh and eat it. Okay, you can cook it. Okay. All right. I know boiled chicken don't taste so good. So let's see. You can cook it, and you can.
No, you can't. They can't have anything on it because that ruins it. Sorry.
Well, that ruins the example.
No, because they wouldn't eat it without that.
Good grief! No, it's sound pretty disgusting so far. So I have to cover it up with barbecue sauce.
Well, then you might as well have potatoes with barbecue sauce.
I think I'll have a potato. I think I'll cover up my potato with barbecue sauce or sweet and sour sauce instead of my chicken butt after I cook it. I have to cook my potato too.
That's my favorite condiment for potatoes is barbecue
I know.
sauce.
I know there are a lot of people out there that laugh at you. They just don't understand just how sufficient a potato is in terms of satisfaction and enjoyment. They want their chicken McNuggets.
Crazy. So here's an interesting question from Jane about supplements for longevity. And she's talking specifically about resveratrol and NMN, which is called nicotinamide and mononucleotide. She says there's someone named David Sinclair, who's a Harvard geneticist, who experimented with mice and contends that those supplements, when coupled with a diet free of animal products, primarily plants, and eating one meal a day, make us younger. Do you think that those supplements are safe? She thinks they're basically vitamin B3.
No, they're not vitamin D3. They're
B3, she said, she thinks.
B3. Well, they come from like resveratrol comes from eating fruit like grapes. You know, that's why they say it's good to eat wine. It drink wine, it's good, produces your, anyway, that's where that comes from. And I don't know where the other ones come from, but what I do know is true is that a lot of what he says is true. That if you eat an animal product free diet, you'll live longer. And we've known since 1936 that experiments done on animals show that calorie restriction prolongs the life of an animal by 30 to 50%. 30 to 50%. And some recent research that I put together, which we're going to put out as a program about aging gracefully. You know, I show you where they do CAT scans and they look at the hypothalamus and they find that eating more meat results in rapid atrophy of the hypothalamus. So you lose your memory. That's what the hypothalamus does, you know, it's part of the brain. And they show this in this really, really great research. The more polyphenols, which are basically plants, the slower the deterioration of your hypothalamus. The more starch-based diet you eat, the more you preserve your brain function. So not only do you live longer, but you live smarter. And that's what the research says. Now, whether or not these supplements work, I can't attest to that. I don't know that even experiments have been done that are satisfactory. But they sound like they're relatively non-toxic. But why would you buy them when it's really the plants that do it?
Well, people think that if you're getting enough from plants, then to get more would probably be better.
Yeah, well, it would be nice, but you know, we just don't see that. That's what they thought about supplements is plants aren't enough. I got to take this isolated concentrated nutrient. So I get more of a good thing, more and more and more. Well, I've shown the evidence that you get less, you get hurt, you could die from doing such stuff. So I'd have to look at these particular supplements. There are some supplements out there that look kind of encouraging, and they are. I discussed those in the aging talk, and I also discuss how to prevent Alzheimer's disease. And I get rid of the aluminum out of your body, and silicone drinks that and teas that you can purchase and drink. Silicone water. Silica, S-I-L-I-C-A. Silica water that is really non-toxic, cheap. Silica teas, which
What does that do?
What it does is it takes the aluminum out of the body. It chelates the aluminum, and aluminum is the cause of Alzheimer's. It's aluminum poisoning. So, you know, these are some
So
things.
that would be a supplement that would be okay.
Yeah, it actually comes from a plant.
Of course.
Yeah, you know, they all come from plants. The question is when how much do they refine the substance? Silica is very little refined, and how much do they refine it? And
Isn't that just like dirt?
that's good, Mary. It's probably like dirt.
I mean,
It comes from grass, but it also comes from. It's found in plants, but it is there. You know, there's some type of rocks that have, but it's not. It's not.
Well, I remember when we had fish.
Yeah.
You'd line your fish tank with some type of a silica, so there was like gravel or stones or something.
Yeah. It's not silicon.
No, I know.
Yeah,
No,
it's silica.
Yeah.
So.
Silicone makes for pans and
Well,
joints.
it's also an element.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, that's a whole different lecture that, you know, maybe sometime, but we're putting that together as something that we're offering to people. The discussion on aging gracefully, and it'll be out here in sometime in the next couple of weeks. You'll get notice on it. Aging gracefully and preserving your mental health, your memory.
Great, thank you. This is from Marilyn. She says, is there a certain B12 vitamin that you recommend? I take a gummy B12 that is 1,000 milligrams. Is this the right amount? And is all B12 vitamins created equally?
Well, that was part of the discussion that I just gave, so you can rewatch that. But there are 4 forms of B12. They're the cyano, the methyl, the adenosyl, and the hydroxy form. And what I tried to explain to you was the cyano form, which is used by doctors to correct B12 deficiency by giving shots. it's been questioned as far as its ability to reverse brain damage. So I would pick any of the other ones, like the methyl and the hydroxy. And
But they don't make one that has all of them in it, right? You
no,
have to
but I
buy.
found a combination that has both those, methyl and hydroxy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in fact, I showed that in the picture. It has both
Okay.
of the methyl and hydroxy. And you could
Otherwise, like we have 3 different jars in
Yeah.
our bathroom.
we do
of
take
3
B12.
different kinds.
Is what
Yeah,
Mary's
we do.
telling us. We take B12.
But
When was the last
once a
time we
month.
took?
Once
No,
a month,
we do
maybe.
recommend it to people. As I said, I want to avoid it. I want to avoid any unnecessary criticism, so we do recommend it. The only thing that anybody could possibly ding me on is B12 deficiency, and the argument there I've told you is just silly. But
We're too clean.
Say again?
We're too clean.
Well, Mary and I are not very hygienic. We've been married for 50 plus years, and we kind of get it.
Well, most people are too clean.
They are.
They sterilize everything and they clean their
And
kitchen
we just
counters.
kind of, we used to have animals too, and we kind of lick them and kiss them and never, you can imagine, people are all worried about germs, but they take their cat and their dog and they pet their bellies and other parts. And they just go and eat a sandwich and don't even think about it. But you think about it, you think you're going to get a lot of B12. Most bacteria are
So
friendly.
Pets are good for people.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. We're not getting any more pets, Mary.
Well, we've had our share.
We've done it. We've done the pet thing. There's bacteria are necessary for good health. So anyway, if you rewatch that section, I think I pretty much told you that you need 5 micrograms a day at most. You need 0.5 of a microgram. We recommend 5 micrograms. You can't buy anything lower than 500 micrograms, and they often come in doses of 5,000 micrograms. Why? Because it's cheap. And 2, because you're going to take care of anybody who has passive absorption. In other words, they've destroyed the intrinsic factor in their stomach. So for those people, you're going to correct B12 deficiency with those kinds of doses. You don't have to give shots. But I see people all the time in our practice that are on B12 shots every month from their doctor. Stop it. Just plain and simple, stop it. You're being poorly treated. Instead, what you do is you get off the shots, which are, painful and necessary, costly. And you just take the oral B12 and the doses I told you. And by the way, the references. So if you want to read them, on that particular slide, you can look it up. It shows you that the oral B12 supplements in the dose of 1,000 to 2,000 micrograms a day are as good as any shot ever given by a doctor for B12 deficiency. Just take the pills.
Well, I remember when I was a nurse in an office, people used to think that, I used to take care of some of them. They'd come into the office and they'd get a B12 shot because they thought it would give them more energy, or if they were tired. Why would that be?
Well, because they related that to anemia.
Oh, okay.
And people will do anything after a hangover. So, you go out big night, you're feeling horrible the next day. Even any placebo will work. It doesn't matter. Distilled water, we could give you a shot of, or a little saline water. But, B12, because it has a connection with anemia, which anemia is so associated with fatigue.
Oh, okay.
Kind of the mind gets going away. And anyway, you get it.
Okay.
But as a nurse, you got to see a lot of this stuff.
I did.
I know a lot of people out there are nurses, and you've had the experiences we have, is that the current medical business does not deal with the problem, which is the food. So the patients keep coming back and back and back with the same problems.
Well, people like to think that they're taking care of, that their doctor's taking care of them, giving them shots to make them feel better. And I worked in a place that we gave shots to people to help them lose weight.
You gave horse urine.
Oh yeah, horse urine
Yeah,
shots.
can you imagine?
People would come in 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I'd give them a shot of HCG. Okay, so which is horse urine, and this was supposed to help them lose weight, and they would faithfully come 3 times a week to get this shot.
Yeah.
I don't think it ever helped them.
Well,
lose
they
weight.
were told the shot only works if you eat a healthy diet and go exercise.
No, we didn't have a healthy diet.
Yeah, I'm sure you didn't, but
No.
that's the way that the consumer is they want some high tech stuff. You know, it's something as simple as eating a bowl of mashed potatoes is not, it's not deserving. You want to make sure it has plenty of pills. So therefore, I should probably tell them about the pill. The McDougall diet doesn't work unless you buy pills from us. We have these pills. They're green. They're stamped on both sides with an M. We sell them for $4 a piece, and you can eat brown rice and potatoes and sweet potatoes all day long, and the McDougall diet doesn't work unless you buy these pills. Heather sells them. She's got 3 kids that are about ready to go to college, and so she sells them at $4 a piece, and you have to take 4 a day. Oh, come on now. You know I'm just joking. But that's the way the mind works is, you know, don't bother me with low tech. I want high tech. So we got a pill for you.
Okay, thanks, Dr. McDougall. So this is from Diana. She wanted to know what your thoughts were about the FDA limiting or banning supplements. She's talking specifically about, let's see, I guess she feels that taking a few key supplements like B12 enhances her immunity. And she says there are some supplements that aren't necessary, but she's troubled that the FDA is targeting key beneficial supplements and working at taking away our right to take them over the counter.
This is politics. I mean, it's the Hatch Act. Orrin Hatch. He was a senator. He got this passed 30 years ago or so, which made it so that the FDA could not stop your ability to buy crap. And that's, the supplement industry went out after the politicians and paid them a ton of money. And as a result, they got a law passed that says that it's legal to sell these supplements, and no medical organization could stop you them. And that's what happened.
And they don't have to prove that they work.
It's the Hatch Act. It's politics. It's just, it's just like, I'm not going to get into politics.
No, don't.
But there are a lot of things that I feel very strongly about these days that have to do with getting holes in little kids, which is it's called lead poisoning. The whole bunch of things have got me upset. But anyway, that's why, and your attitude expresses exactly why this law was passed. You can't tell me what to do. You want to give me good advice? I'm not listening. I can buy whatever supplement I want, even if the science proves it doesn't work. It's my money, my body. Well, you know what? We have an FDA. We have a United States Department of Agriculture. We have some honest doctors that are out there trying to help you search through the literature. You do it yourself. What I showed you today, you could spend like 15 minutes this afternoon to confirm that I'm right. And then, of course, you go to the supplement page where they sell you a bunch of supplements. They don't have evidence. They just have strong statements, colorful pills. And, it's probably the value of the supplements. You ask me what the best supplement is. It's the one that costs the most money. It's like whiskey. The best whiskey's the one that costs the most money. They're all sickening, taste horrible. I want a good whiskey. Well, give me one that costs the most money per shot. It just, stop this. Stop being a sucker. People aren't taking your right to be free away. There's certain things in our society that you need some help with. The intention of the government is to protect you from foreign and domestic threats. You don't have IBM or Apple that forms an army to protect you from foreign threats, do you? Okay, well, the government's there to protect you from domestic threats too. And there's been efforts in the past to do this for us, to be strong enough to, the truth rises to the surface eventually, but it sure hasn't, after the Hatch Act, it certainly hasn't with supplements. So I'm sorry your rights are being violated and you're not a true American, okay, whatever. Okay, sorry. Thank you, Mary.
Dr. McDougall, you're coming back on August 1st to give part 2 of this lecture, which is going to include vitamin D. And I'm wondering, is it also going to include omega-3 fatty acids? Because we have a comment The reason I asked is we have a comment from a live viewer named Hannah saying, can someone let me know if it's safe to eliminate all nuts and seeds until I reach my Kempner goal weight? I'm worried about omega-3.
Yeah. Well, omega-3 is made by plants. Only plants take alpha-linolenic acid, ALA. Only plants can make ALA. That's the basic omega-3 fat. No animal can do it. And as you have the ability to take this ALA and turn it into DHA and EPA. And you do it efficiently, very efficiently, so that you don't have to eat nuts and seeds. Whether it would be helpful, would you be in better health? I don't think so. You're going to have trouble with the extra fat. I don't think nuts and seeds and avocados, et cetera, are unhealthy. They're just very concentrated in fat, and 90% of their calories are fat. The fat you eat is the fat you wear. So if one of your goals is to lose weight, and, the lecture I gave on the Kempner diet and weight loss was to show you the extreme, to show you how a diet of rice and fruit juice, and I have tremendous respect for Walter Kempner. You know that I do. But that's an extreme that very few people have to go to. I use the Kempner diet maybe 3 times a year. When somebody comes to me and 90% of their heart muscle's gone, 90% of their kidney function is gone, then I resort to the things that he taught. And he provides the evidence that it really works. He's worked in it for decades, for probably 70 years, published in the scientific literature. So when I tell somebody who's in chronic kidney disease, they've lost 90% of their kidney, that this is your best hope. And I use Kempner as an example. But for those of you who are out trying to lower your cholesterol, get your bowels working, lose that extra body fat, you don't have to do that. You just eat the basic McDougall diet. You can pick just white rice. You can pick potatoes and sweet potatoes and fruits and vegetables of various kinds. So why make it more extreme than necessary? It doesn't make any sense. But an answer to your question is, you'll be fine. You won't go omega-3 deficient. The only fatty acid deficiency example that I can give you happened during the 1930s. And bottle feeding became very, very popular back in the 1930s, and breastfeeding was kind of out the door. Drug companies, they did this. They decided that a glass bottle and a rubber nipple was better than the real thing. Guys, really. Okay, so what they did is they decided that all babies should be fed this concoction of chemicals that the drug industry invented. And what they started out is making the formulas from whole fat milk. And the kids became very fat, and they knew it was the fat. So they put them on fat-free milk. And what happened is they developed fatty acid deficiency. They developed dry skin, cracks in the corner of their mouths. Easily correctable by just putting them back on the supplement. There's a whole lecture. You'll want to watch it. It's on fat. It's a 4-hour lecture that I put together for you. It's on YouTube. That goes through all of this history on essential fatty acids and how much you need, where you get them from. And all the basic research is there for you. But anyway, that's the only case of fatty acid deficiency that I can find, is that example of formulas, infant formulas, instead of the breast. The breast is always perfect, always right.
Great. Speaking of Dr. Kempner, this isn't on supplements, but this question actually was very interesting because it came in after your Kempner lecture. And the person was asking, when trying to figure out what your weight should be based on his chart or your chart, if it's somebody that lost height due to like an accident or something, do you base your weight on what your height would have been or what it is now? Does that make sense?
Well, it does. I know what the question is. And what it would be is what your height would naturally be. And you find Kempner's work if you go to my website and you look on my November 2015 newsletter. The Kempner charts on what an ideal weight would be are there. And, it will surprise you, it will shock you. The reason I put the Kempner charts in there was so that you didn't get scared, because you're going to lose that amount of weight. If you follow what we recommend, then you're gonna worry about being too thin. Some of your friends are gonna think you're too thin. And this should reassure you that you're not too thin. Mary and I and AJ are all below what Kempner recommends as ideal weights. And, you know, I certainly think AJ looks phenomenal. You look pretty good too. Anyway, look, so go to the November 2015 newsletter, realize that people who are sick, Kempner said, should weigh 10 to 15% less than those figures. And realize those figures are to help you be reassured that you're not losing too much weight. And it would be based upon what your height would have been if somebody wouldn't have broken some vertebrae.
So your height, so based on what your height would have been. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I don't know whether you can look that up, the November 2015 newsletter. You want to share that with them?
Yeah, I did. I actually linked it in the Kempner talk, but I thought it was an interesting question because I actually did break my back in my 20s. And so I'm shorter than what my height would have been. And I always wondered, which weight do I use?
Well, you know what? It's probably only about 3 or 4 pounds.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And,
Well,
and again, AJ, Chef AJ.
Yeah, I got a question.
Anybody that looks at you and doesn't come away with, wow, what a healthy looking, attractive woman.
Yeah,
you know, you got a problem. I really think you do. You know, that's the only thing that should cross your mind is that she's a healthy looking, attractive woman.
And I don't eat nuts or seeds, and I haven't for 11 years. And you know, I haven't dropped dead. And just to be sure, I get this test called the fatty acid profile every year because everybody's so worried about me. And I'm looking at my results, and they're like off the charts. Like how I am so low risk with my omega-3 index and how everything, my arachidonic acid, my EPA, my DHA, the ratio, it's like so high. So I don't get why people just are so obsessed with eating nuts and seeds.
Because it sells DHA and EPA supplement oils that they buy. You know, this is business, and they fool you. They take a little bit of truth and they blow it into something that's not really true. You know, yes, you need these fatty acids for normal function of your cells and your brain and so on, but they don't go and tell you that the original fatty acid is from plants.
Well, they think no one can eat the way we do.
Yeah, that's true too. And
you know, AJ, you know, the kind of food that you eat and the kind of food that we eat, in general, people don't think anybody else can do that.
Yeah. You know, we were there one time. It was like 50 years ago. But when somebody was a vegetarian or a vegan, I just, you know, how in the world do they do that? And then, you know, we had our health problems and we had our education, and most of you know what that is, you know. So.
We got a question for Mary about jackfruit from Karen. Could Mary talk about the jackfruit that she gets on Amazon, how she uses it? I'd like to give it a try, but I don't know how to cook with it.
Well, jackfruit is a fruit, so it's a really healthy plant food, and it really has no flavor at all. You can either buy it in cans that come in brine, so you have to soak it to get all the extra water off, or you can buy it already shredded but unseasoned. And so you just have to add, like for me, I use it and I add barbecue sauce to it. And then I make it into like pulled jackfruit buns. And I put coleslaw on top of that and then some mustard, and we eat it in buns, and it tastes great. But I know other people that have added like a taco seasoning, and they use it as a topping for tacos or as a filling for tacos. But basically it's unflavored, and you just add whatever seasonings you like, and you can turn it into these great tasting things. I think it needs some kind of a sauce to go with it. So that's why I find barbecue sauce works really well. So it'd be great. It's real easy to use. There's recipes for how to do it on our website. And it depends on which kind I buy, whether I buy the pre-shredded kind that's just plain jackfruit already shredded. Doesn't take as much cooking. If you buy the kind that comes in the cans, you have to soak that first in water to get all the excess salt off it. And then it takes a little bit longer to cook, and I do that like for a whole day in my slow cooker. And again, we just like it best with barbecue sauce, but I know people use all kinds of other seasonings, and it just works great.
Yeah,
And
it's like tofu. It takes on the taste of whatever you put on it.
Yeah.
And health-wise, it's particularly good because it's only about 3-4% protein.
Oh, speaking of protein, yeah, we have a question on the. A question came in on protein. If you want to answer it, it's not on supplements, but this is from Janet. She says that Brenda Davis said at the NHA conference that senior vegans need to eat more protein than the recommended 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. She says it's healthier to eat 1 to 1.3 grams of protein per 2.2 pounds of body weight because vegan seniors have limited digestion when eating a lot of fiber and the protein doesn't get through. She said suggested that other countries do so as well. Do senior starchivores have to up their protein for health? And should they up their calcium to 1,200 milligrams a day?
Well, I have great respect for Brenda Davis, but I have to disagree with her on this kind of recommendations. Seniors are at particular risk for osteoporosis, and upping your protein, all the research says that protein breaks down into amino acids and creates a physiologic acidosis. In other words, you carry this extra acid throughout your body, which causes the bones to dissolve to neutralize the acid. It's a chronic loss of bone material, not just calcium, that occurs. And the other argument is that you're going to get sarcopenia, which is something that was invented just a couple of decades ago. This is other nonsense. I probably talked to you about that in one of our lectures.
What does that mean?
Sarcopenia means losing muscle as you get older.
Okay.
Sarco being muscle, penia being loss.
All right.
Like osteopenia, bone loss.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyway, sarcopenia. So this is the big new way to sell you protein powders, amino acid powders. And it's been picked up by the protein industries, the food industries like the beef and the poultry, et cetera. Is the idea as you get older, you're going to lose muscle mass. And the way we can fix it is we can feed you extra protein.
Well, couldn't you fix it by getting more exercise?
Well, that's what it turns out. I've got 6 review articles. Didn't I give these to you on one of our lectures, Chef AJ, did I?
I'm sure you did a protein lecture.
Yeah, well, I gave them to Heather, and I pulled out 6 review articles on whether or not sarcopenia is effectively treated by adding more meat or adding protein supplements. And every one of the articles says, no, it doesn't. This is all, and you can find me dozens of articles that show that it does. Yeah, paid for by, by the livestock industry, paid for by this supplement salesman, but you won't find me any really solid based science articles. So what Brenda is saying is that it's based on this theory of sarcopenia. I just ask her to look carefully at the science. And what she'll find is that maybe in people who are really sick, like with cancer, maybe you can add some muscle mass by adding protein supplements. But the real way to add muscle mass is by resistance exercise. And that's what the research says. And that's what makes sense. It all starts from a basic concept that I'd like you to think about is that, people believe that eating muscle grows muscle. And yeah, they do. They believe that. And if that was the case, considering the amount of muscles that Americans eat, they'd all look like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Instead of like fat blobs.
Yeah, fat blobs. So, it's just this kind of thing. It's like eating brains will make you smart. And eating testicles will make you, well, whatever. It's logical, right? Logical, but it just ain't true. So again, I would like to, if it was any serious, and Brenda Davis is a good friend, a really responsible dietitian, but I'm pretty darn sure that if she and I were sitting together and we were talking about the basic science and what review articles of good scientists show, she'd have to come to the conclusion that this is a sales pitch from the protein industries. And she should know better, because she's a very competent dietitian. So, no, you shouldn't be taking extra protein as you get older. You get.
Well, maybe her experiences with people who don't get enough calories during the day, and then they would get less protein because they're not eating as many calories.
Well,
Possible?
and I don't know, maybe they should eat more food.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Not just protein.
The other
they should
thing
eat
is,
more
the other
food.
thing is you have to realize, as people get older, they undergo a penia. We get smaller. We carry around fewer muscles and fewer bones. It's part of aging. It's natural. It kind of occurs. But what you want to ask, and you know, I'll easily provide these for you if Heather hasn't sent them over already, is I'll show you the research that clearly says that taking these supplements or eating more meat, which is, well, how else would you get protein? How would you get extra protein? This is what they're talking about. Does not reverse sarcopenia that resistance exercise does. You know, it's just an advertising pitch. So anyway, if Brenda Davis would like to discuss it, she knows I'm more than willing. It's that kind of misinformation that unfortunately creates billion-dollar businesses and results in people getting in trouble, getting the poor health. Like, for example, if you take these protein supplements, you create an acidosis in the body, which causes bone loss.
Well, see, I think that people like this information because then they can eat whatever they want and they feel like, well, whatever I'm not getting from the food, if I just take a few supplements, then it'll be okay.
Wouldn't that be nice? No, sorry, you have to eat a good diet. You have to exercise. You have to get sunshine. That's what you need. You just need those three elements. And yes, you are going to die. We've all been trying for, I'm sure, at least 1 million years to find the fountain of youth. And life is terminal. And plain and simple, you just want to live it as best you can. And you do that by being as healthy as possible. And you can extend your life a little bit, just like the one question on supplements was. It's really true. If you cut your calorie intake, you'll prolong the days on earth that you're here. But it's painful to discuss your calorie, to reach your calorie intake, unless you do it the way we suggest. And that is, you can, just by eating a starch-based diet and reducing the fat intake, you can get calorie restriction of, say, 600 calories a day, just by getting the fat out of the food. That's equivalent to what a calorie restricted diet would be. There's a calorie restricted organization where people get together and, they pledge, I'll eat less food. Just like the animals since 1936 were studied. And by the way, there were mouse and rats and worms and flies and rhesus monkeys that were studied. And all this research is there. It all says the same thing, is that you will live longer if you restrict calories. Well, but doc, that hurts. That's painful. Yeah, it does, unless you do it the way we suggest. And that is, you just get the fat out of the food and you spontaneously reduce your calorie consumption as much as you would on a starvation diet. Just fix the food right. And by the way, that's all in a lecture that I put together that Heather's going to make available for you folks soon.
Yeah, I think the ad goes out tomorrow.
Does it?
Nice. Yeah. So
it's a good series. It's about aging gracefully and keeping your brain. And part of that involves not believing that omega-3 fats prevent Alzheimer's disease, because they don't. Not believing that Pravagen, you should buy Pravagen. I hear all day long, Pravagen. Well, the medical letter, which is one of the respected medical letters that I've been reading for 50 years, they came out and said this is absolute nonsense. And the FDA actually asked these people to stop doing this, the Pravagen people. And their claims are based on one experiment that they paid for and did. Yet you'd think that this was some kind of miracle. And we're all worried about losing our mind, aren't we? We're worried about, it doesn't necessarily how long I live. It's, I want to be functional. I don't want to be a burden on my family. And so these brain supplements, which are really, really popular these days, I mean, they've surpassed every other type of sales pitch, snake oil that's out there, are very appealing because the population is getting older. And all of us are worried most about losing our mental function. Well, you want to hear about how to preserve your mental function, then get the lectures that Heather's coming out with in the next day or two that I did. It took me several months to put them together. I put a lot of work into them. It shows you how to age grade. It discusses the stuff you've been talking about, calorie restriction, et cetera, but how to do it right. Discusses how to keep the hypothalamus from atrophy and not buy into these supplements. Don't get Alzheimer's from eating aluminum. Don't get Parkinson's from eating pesticides. It's just basic stuff.
I know. People are so afraid. They really think these supplements are going to save them.
Well, you know what? If they would, the U.S. Preventive Service Task Force would have come out with a different conclusion than they did in June of this year. They told you that these things will increase your risk of cancer and heart disease, taking beta carotene and vitamin E and other supplements. Now, I showed you why. You know, you should all be sitting there, well, you know, this makes sense. If I flood a cell with various types of carotenoids, and there are 50 different ones, and they all attach to the same carotenoid receptor, and I flood it with just one of the carotenoids, beta carotene, where do the other 49 carotenoids sit? They got no place to sit. Now, if you take in the fruit and vegetable, then it happens to be mixed up in an ideal mixture, so the right balance happens. The right amount of each of those 49 carotenoids goes through the cell wall into the cytoplasm and attaches to the receptors like they should be. Why? Why? Because nature is pretty darn smart. And they've been at it for, 400,000 years. And, we're supposed to be the end result of all this innovation. And if we, like I said, the reason I don't sell supplements is what we're declaring when we sell supplements is that we're smarter than God. We sit in a laboratory with some technician and says, I can do better than God did. I can do better than nature did. I'm so smart. Well, you know what? You're wrong. Nature did it right in the first place. And you ought to start obeying the rules. And unfortunately, there's a lot of money involved in you not understanding or obeying the rules.
Hey, thanks, Doc. This is from Robin. Dr. McDougall, I had breast cancer. I had a lumpectomy in February, a 3.9 centimeter tumor removed. When pathology came back, surgeon said no, they didn't get a clear margin on one side. They scheduled a second surgery, which I canceled. I refused radiation, and so right now I don't have an oncologist. Many people juice and heal their cancer. I follow your maximum weight loss program, and my question is it necessary to juice? I eat about 70 to 80% raw with cooked starches. I tried juice and salads, but I didn't like it. And they also suggest all these different supplements, which I can take, but are quite expensive. And I only take B12 and D. Which ones are beneficial, or is diet enough to produce no evidence of disease?
Well, who do you want to listen to? I mean, there are lots of people out there that will give you their opinion. I put my opinion on how to treat breast cancer. I put it up on the internet in a lecture that you and I did together about a year ago. So what you do when you're done with this is you go to YouTube, you put in McDougall and breast cancer or AJ and breast cancer. And I'll tell you how I treat breast cancer all the way from the lumpectomy to not getting radiation, to not getting chemotherapy. And the diet I recommend, I'm sorry, I'm boring you folks, but it's the same diet whether you have toe fungus or you want to prevent a heart attack or you want to slow or stop the progression of breast cancer, which is described in my February 2015 newsletter. The American Cancer Society tells you that you will live longer if you eat a healthy diet after you get breast, colon, prostate cancer. The American Cancer Society tells you that as of February 2015. So, what I'm going to tell you is what the science says, is that, why don't you watch the lecture? And no, you shouldn't be supplementing, you shouldn't be juicing. You shouldn't be spending your money on these supplements. You should get yourself in shape. Women are overweight, and I heard you say you were. Die faster of breast cancer. I published the first study of that in 1984 on the dietary treatment of breast cancer, and took the American Cancer Society from 1984 to 2015 to come to the same conclusions that I came to in the paper I published. So, anyway, it's all there, costs you nothing, saves you disfigurement from having your breast amputated, save you all kinds of difficulties, including increased risk of dying from the radiation and the chemotherapy. Because the science is clear. It's solid. You just need to have it under your belt so that when you go to the doctor and you say, look, doc, I want a lumpectomy. I don't want radiation. I just want clear margins. The doc says, well, that's just not right. You're not supposed to do that. And all you do is you pull out Bernard Fisher's publications that were done between 1975 and 1982. You say, hey, doc, how about this? This is the biggest study ever done on how to treat breast cancer properly. You show me any research that says this isn't true. Bernard Fisher. Okay? Why do I know all this stuff? It's because that was during my career. You know, I was a doctor at this time. I took care of patients. I read the science. I had, you know, dozens and dozens of breast cancer patients. I had to be on top of the game because you want to be criticized as a doctor. You deal with cancer. And the reason is because oncologists, they're the biggest example of the emperor wears no clothes. They do the most lying of any subspecialty that I'm aware of. And they're afraid you're going to catch them. So they exaggerate, misinform. So anyway, all that's in a whole bunch of stories that are available to you. McDougall's Medicine, A Challenging Second Opinion, the McDougall Program for Women, which may be still available free on our website. Just go there, you sign up for the books. When you get done, the cash register says 0. A couple of books I wrote on breast cancer. You watch this DVD this YouTube video that I did about a year ago. You know, I'm a scientist. You know, I look at the information carefully. Why? I don't want to be criticized by my colleagues. I don't want a lawsuit. You know, I don't want you to come back and say, doc, you know, you made recommendations that have done me more good than harm. It's my job.
So would you like to answer more questions? You want to go have lunch? These are not on supplements. People are writing medical, just general medical stuff about leaky gut and eye conditions and things like that.
I think that's probably enough time.
But, you know, we're probably overdoing these people.
Well, I don't think they think so, but I want to respect your time and you are coming back.
Well, it's just that I don't overstay my welcome. AJ, I really love being on your show. I think you're doing a tremendous service to people to give, you know, a whole bunch of opinions. You have a lot of different opinions on here. And, you know, to do that, you know, you help so many people. I just don't want to get into a situation where people, oh, McDougall, say there they are again. They're always bugging me with eating potatoes. I don't want to hear this. I want to hear some other stuff. I want to hear a doctor with sell me supplements and I don't want to hear this. I got to eat right stuff. So anyway, Mary says it's about time to quit. You're about ready to overstay, and you're welcome.
Oh,
but anyway, you guys can join us on Saturday night or Sunday night. Sunday night, we're going to be doing, you know, if you like what you hear, you keep building the audience, because that's why we're doing it, is to get the word out. We'll be there every Sunday night. If you want to bring your doctor out who has a question about what I recommend, you're welcome.
And we'll be back with AJ in 2 weeks.
That's
yeah,
right,
we're going to do vitamin D, and maybe you'll touch on omega-3 fatty acids.
No, I'll do a bit on that, the omega-3s and the vitamin D, and you know, I can't catch up with all the sales pitches out there. I really can't. I try, but I do know what's true. That is, you are a starch eater, a starchivore, a starchitarian. It's what 99.99% of people who ever walk this earth lived on corn and or potatoes and or rice and or wheat, etc. That's the human diet. Once you get that, everything falls in place. Until you get that, you're just confused. You know, it's the food. That costs you nothing, makes no profit, but it's the food. Thank you, Chef AJ.
Thank you, Dr. McDougall and Mary. It's always a pleasure seeing you, and everybody's typing. You could never overstay your welcome, but.
Well, thank you very much. But you know, I do worry about that. I do. And I really appreciate your hospitality.
You always get like at least 500 people watching live. So it doesn't seem like so far you have.
All right. Well, I'll keep trying. I'll come back in a couple of weeks and talk to you folks about vitamin D, which is one of the biggest scams out there. And again, you don't have to believe me. I provide for you the research. You can read the same stuff I read. There's not a lot of controversy out there. There's, people who have a lot of opinions, but the science is solid. Anyway, we'll have fun when we do the essential fats and the vitamin D. I got that all pretty much done, that lecture. I just got to refine it and get it just right for this crowd.
Great. Well, you guys have a great lunch with lots of
stuff.
All
right. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, AJ.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, group.
Take care. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific time. My guest is a registered nurse who is plant-based. Her name is Stephanie Spencer. She's going to be making several recipes, including a crab cake made out of lion's mane mushrooms. Take care, everyone. And thank you so much for watching. And be sure to subscribe at chefaj.com, because when we have Dr. McDougall, or really any medical doctor on, we can't take questions from the chat. You need to send them in advance. And we send you a schedule every Saturday or Sunday for the week. And you just reply to that email with your question and tell us which guest it's from.